Can't believe I'm doing this. Apologies for the next couple of seconds. Carry on my wayward son. There'll be... Hello, friends. This is Coldrun. Welcome back to a blind playthrough of Elden Ring, where I'm taking a break from the gameplay. So if you're just here for more gameplay in progress, this will not be it. We'll continue that in the next video. I wanted to use this to capture the notes I've been taking, because I've been going through my old videos, all of them, to write down each little piece of lore I find as best I can, each kind of note highlights about conversations, and trying to organize them into getting a better sense of what's going on in the world. And so, yeah, here I'm just going to be going through that. Not everything I've taken notes on, but I want to go through some of the bigger story beats, thoughts on some of the characters, not every storyline, but thoughts on some of the NPC storylines, various theories, that sort of thing. So I'm recording this after I finished all the rest of it, but I wanted to put this up front. A quick disclaimer. In this video, I'm giving a lot of theories, many of which are half-assed, many of which are wrong. Occasionally I'll be right. I'm not looking for corrections or spoilers or anything like hot or cold. I'm not looking for any of that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The only thing I'll ask you to, if you feel like it, if you notice I say something that I just flat out the game expects me to understand and I was just wrong, I misread it or something, feel free to let me know. Like if the game straight, like if I don't say this, but for example, if I said we don't really know who the first Elden Lord is, I think it's Gurranq. Like you can feel free to say like that the game said here and here that. Like, you already saw that Godfrey was the first Elden Lord. So, like, if I flat out misread something, like, the game told it to me, expects me to know it, and I just forgot it or wrote it down wrong, let me know, certainly let me know about that. Otherwise, if my guesses are wrong or hot or cold, I'll figure it all out as we go. So, okay, back to past Coldrun. And what better place to start than the Golden Order itself and the deities and kind of the leadership of the Golden Order, not the demigods, not that far, but just the grace, greater will of the Erd Tree, the Two Fingers, Queen Marika, and the Elden Ring itself. So the grace and the greater will, I think that those are... We've heard that grace and greater will are an expression of the Erd Tree, that the sites of... I think that those are an expression of the Erd Tree, that the Erd Tree is kind of tied to both of those. We've heard that sites of grace are the grace of the Erd Tree. And so I think when people talk about bestowing grace, it's kind of the force, or the grace is like the force or will of the Erd Tree. That's my best understanding. That phrase, it's my best guess, best understanding, is probably going to come up a lot. The Erd Tree's origins, I don't really know. We heard a number of times that the Erd Trees comes from the primordial crucible. Yeah, we've heard a couple times that the Erd Tree comes from the primordial crucible, that the Erd Tree's primal vital energies are an aspect of the primordial crucible, where all life was once blended together. What's interesting about this is that, like, there's all sorts of entities we'll be talking about today, the dragons, the beasts and people and gods, and we've seen the aspect of the crucible is from a crucible knight, who is someone that is like a holy knight but also has dragony elements to them, so that's why I think of life all being blended up. And so I think the demigods and Marika were one outlet of that primal crucible, one outcome of it, but not the only one. Dragons were another outcome. Even beasts. One of the crafting materials we've seen a bunch of are the old fangs. Perhaps they're a vestige of the primordial crucible. So maybe some came out and became. This is something that my friend Prustian noticed here, that when she got to this, that I hadn't thought of, was that maybe the old fang is like a sign that the beasts could have grown from that same primordial crucible in their own way. So there's also other, as far as the Erd Tree itself. So there are other versions of the trees that are out there. We've heard that there's a great tree and a minor Erd Trees. The minor Erd Trees we've seen kind of dotted all around the landscape. Where are they? Where's one? Yeah, like these things. Like these are, just minor Erdtrees all over. Maybe this is the Erdtree's influence spreading, and that's why. And Guardian, we know there are minor Erdtree guardians protecting them, protecting that influence. But there are minor Erdtrees, and there's the Great Tree seems like a proto Erdtree. We know that the Great Tree its roots were once linked to the Erdtree, and catacombs were built around the Great Tree roots. But I don't really understand. I haven't seen the Great Tree now, and so I assume the Great Tree was like an older version, maybe before the Erdtree of that same thing. So then there's the Two Fingers. The Two Fingers we've heard of from Enya, this finger reader over here. The Two Fingers are envoys to the Greater Will. So again, there's some relationship at the higher level between the Two Fingers and the Erdtree and the Greater Will or Grace. And the Two Fingers seem to be like the main manager of the Grace's will in the lands between. Carrying out in more practical ways what they want, kind of managing the clergy, giving visions, giving, messages, and like managing the various like shadier stuff, like punishments and assassinations. I think the Two Fingers have some role in that, again, carrying out the will of the Erdtree. I think this ties here also because we've seen the Erdtree is pretty badly damaged. We saw there's a huge crack in it. Later we read that the Erdtree no longer, since the Shattering, it doesn't have it doesn't shed blessings in the same way. It's kind of hollowed out, just an object of faith rather than a real center of power the way it was before. And I think that's why the Two Fingers look so nasty. I think that as the Erdtree has waned and kind of hollowed out, so have the Two Fingers themselves. And then there's Queen Marika. Queen Marika the Eternal. Oh, hey, I didn't even notice that. Now, what is the circle behind her? I was thinking for a second, is the circle the Elden Ring itself like that? It does kind of look kind of ring-like. So we know that Marika is not a demigod. She is fundamentally different from the rest of the Golden Order. She is what Enya called a god in truth, and her offspring were the Golden Order. And so she is, again, part of that higher authority up there with the Two Fingers, up there with the Erdtree in power level in the hierarchy. Now, the Elden Ring itself, though, and this whole thing feels kind of Holy Trinity-ish, how the Greater Will and the Two Fingers. Not really the Two Fingers. The Two Fingers are more like the church, I think. But the Greater Will, like a more powerful version, like a church led by angels. But the Greater Will and the Erdtree are like the more abstract versions of that power. But I think Queen Marika is a version of that power, because we've heard that she's the vessel of the Elden Ring. So somehow she carries it. Enya called her the carrier of the Elden Ring's vision. So if the Elden Ring is kind of the combined joint magic and power expressed in this combination of runes, it somehow centers in Queen Marika. During the Shattering, the Elden Ring itself broke into 5 great runes. And I don't know what the others are going to look like. I know that this Godrick's Great Rune is like the center of it. This was the one that Godfrey held, I believe. The anchor ring found in the center of the Elden Ring. But the others I'm not so sure about. Because the Great Rune of the Unborn, the ring I got from Rennala, isn't something that is just part of the Elden Ring image that we saw in the title screen. It's not just like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle where you put the great runes together and they all make up the thing in the title. Because like this thing on this title screen, the thing in the middle is the thing in the middle is Godrick's Great Rune, but I don't see Rennala's anywhere. I see that line going down the middle, but I don't see the circle, the small circle that the line kind of goes through about two-thirds of the way to the right of it. I don't see that anywhere here. So I still don't quite know what the physical Elden Ring is. But I think the Elden Ring is just, again, the expression of the Golden Order's unity and power and magic combined in Rennala. In Marika, sorry. I also think that Queen Marika is fundamentally distinct in her wishes and will from the Greater Will and the Erdtree, though. Because I'll come back to this in the Shattering in a bit, but we know that Marika is being punished by the Two Fingers and by the Erdtree at the moment. That she's locked in the Erdtree. She's punished, and so she must have gone against them. So even they are not even if they share some of the same power, they don't necessarily have the same will, I don't think. So next, let's talk about the breaking of the Golden Order when it first started to, kind of leading up to the Shattering. It started with the Night of the Black Knives, where someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from someone called Malekith the Black Blade, some death-based demigod, I think, and used it to murder one of the golden demigods called Godwyn the Golden. And that act was the catalyst for the Shattering itself, for the big war that followed. Now, a lot of the game's mysteries so far seem to revolve around the questions around the Night of the Black Knives. Who collaborated in it? Why did they collaborate? Who stole the Rune of Death? Why did they steal the Rune of Death? Who carried it out? What did they have to gain from it? What were the aftershocks? Who lost from it? So a lot of that stuff is explored in the game itself, but that's a lot of what we're looking at. Current theories, and I'll get into these probably later on. My current theory is that Ranni is the one, that the witch Ranni is the one behind this plot, with Marika behind her. Maybe even without Ranni knowing. But we know that the reason I think that is that Ranni said she once stole death. And, I mean, someone stole a fragment of death from Malekith. And so when Ranni says she stole death, that's what I think she means. I also think that, and she's also talked all the time about wanting to overturn the order and override death and just restart everything and do everything better. And the reason I think Marika has a role in it too is that she's been punished for it. After the Shattering, the Two Fingers looked at the situation as far as they saw, and they punished Marika for breaking the Golden Order. So they must blame her in some way for the Night of the Black Knives. And so I think she had some role in it. She had some purpose in it. So as far as Godwyn the Golden, Godwyn, who was killed during the Night of Black Knives, then became Prince of Death, Godwyn, Prince of Death, Godwyn, First Dead of the Demigods. I don't quite know what the deal is with Godwyn yet. We know that Godwyn was... There's two things about Godwyn here, and I have a theory about those two. We've read here in the Prince of Death's pustule that it's said that Godwyn is buried deep under the capital at the Erdtree's roots. But we also saw that thing beneath Stormvale Castle, a giant face where we got this Prince of Death's pustule. And we've heard of it described as a sacred relic of the plot during the Night of the Black Knives. So here's my current theory about that. I think that Godwyn was killed physically in Castle Stormvale Castle. And that even if his body was eventually brought and buried beneath the Erdtree's roots here in Lanedale, I think that the face we see there is like the how do I say it? Like, it scarred like when Godwyn was killed, I think like the land around him like erupted and like got cursed and blackened and rotted and turned into that thing. And so I think that's an impression of kind of what happened when he died. That's why I think it's a sacred relic of the plot, but not Godwyn himself. We haven't heard too much about Malekith the Black Blade, the original holder of the Rune of Death. But we do know that after the Night of the Black Knives, the Rune of Death kind of spread. It spread through the underground roots of the Great Tree, which I think is the Proto-Erd Tree. So it spread kind of through the world. And soon after, those who live in death followed. Like death kind of came about across the world. And Death Root came about too, the sprouted form of the Rune of Death. And anyone who came in contact with it, presumably not me, I guess, because I've held it in my pocket. Like maybe I've kept it in a safety container or something. But most who come in contact with it, maybe in some prolonged form, become undead, rising until properly finished off. So it creates this cycle of undeath. I think that's the reason that so many things here appear like hollows from the Souls games. So many of the creatures here just kind of wandering mindlessly, just, again, in a cycle of death and undeath. I think that's part of the outcome of the Night of the Black Knives and the Shattering. So all that leads us to the Shattering talk. Now, there's two versions of the Shattering. Or, there's not really two versions, but there's... The Elden Ring was shattered. And then... But that's not the Shattering. The event called the Shattering was what followed. It was the war that followed. And so, my theory about the Shattering is that, well, we know that the Elden Ring, when it was shattered, it broke into 5 great runes. One was held by Godrick the Golden, last of the Golden lineage. A second was held by Radahn, later given, like a wolf thing, later given to Rennala. One was held by Morgoth the Grace-Given, another by Praetor Ricard. I don't know the pronunciation. And the fifth was given to General Radahn. So it was spread about, but... And so my theory is that the Shattering itself, like when the Elden Ring was shattered, it wasn't like someone hammering a ring, because we haven't really seen much about a single ring. It seems more like a ring, like almost like a political and magical alliance. And when that was shattered, it was because everyone, like, it was the Shattering we've heard is triggered by the mad taint of the demigod's newfound strength. So I think when they all kind of wanted to rise up, and then that was the Shattering. When they went to war, they actually took their pieces of the Elden Ring away, and the Elden Ring, figuratively and literally broke apart as a result. Also interesting that the Greater Will values the Golden Order very highly. Its main goal is for me to become or me or some other Tarnished, to become Elden Lord and restore the Golden Order. But it also doesn't care about the individual demigods that are, I think, part of the Golden Order. It wants me to go ham on those demigods. It wants me to utterly destroy them, I think was what Enya said, the remaining demigods. Because what's more important to them somehow is the Elden Ring being recombined and the Golden Order being restored, not the prior demigods that are now part of the Golden lineage. One more key figure in the Golden lineage's top hierarchy, which I didn't mention, is Godfrey, or the role of Elden Lord. So Elden Lord seems to be the role taken on by someone wedded or consort to Queen Marika. And Godfrey was the first Elden Lord. Godfrey was the patriarch of the Golden lineage. And the Shattering itself, and so at some point, he was exiled. At some point, Queen Marika sent him divested him of grace, divested him and his warriors of grace, sent him and his warriors to die in far-off lands, and then asked them, once they die afterwards, to return to the Lands Between. So she sent them away from the Lands Between, told them to fight and die there. And then after they died, told them to come back here, wage war and brandish the Elden Ring. Grow strong in the face of death, warriors of my Lord, Lord Godfrey, was what Marika had said. And here's my... And we know that, like, this is a monument in Caelid talking about Godfrey's army. That I think this happened after Godfrey, was divested of grace, left, came back, and fought. I think this is saying that Lord Godfrey, at the end of his campaign, his golden army is unvanquished and unbowed, yet finds grace lost, tattered, and faded. I think this means that Lord Godfrey then came back to the world after death with some troops and then was given his grace again. I don't know what happened then. I don't know exactly. Maybe this happened earlier or later in the timeline. I don't know. But that leads me to a very vague theory I've been cooking up, which is I think that the Tarnished, me and all the other Tarnished buddies, were part of Godfrey's army. That when he was exiled, we went with him. Because we know that the Tarnished, when we come to the Tarnished, we'll hear that the Tarnished were walked through the fog and through the lands between, and walked through, through the fog to the lands between, and had their grace restored. And the idea of someone who was exiled, was far away, had grace taken away from them, divested from them, as Marika says, and then dies, and comes back here and gets their grace back in some way, that matches up exactly with what we hear, largely at least, with what we hear about Godfrey and his exile. So that's my current theory about the Tarnished and me. I think that we are here because we are part of Godfrey's army, even if we don't remember it. A few other things from the Shattering, kind of times before the game started, that I've picked up. Godrick the Grafted, formerly Godrick the Golden, at some point he was in Leyndell with his armies. They were exiled from there. They fled. They left the royal capital of Leyndell. His army here in Stormvale Castle had tons of exiled knights and banished knights within it. Patches called his troops the survivors of a defeated army. And we also hear specifically how he was defeated, or who defeated him. We know that Godrick at some point insulted Malenia, the Blade of Miquella, who's going to come up when we talk about the Halig Tree later. But Godrick insulted Malenia and got his ass absolutely rocked. He didn't die. He groveled before her. I don't know why she why she spared him. But yeah, he kind of sucked. She spared him, and he lived in this wreck of a castle, making lives of everyone everyone around him miserable. Now, something we don't know much about is which we'll probably learn about more as we get into Caelid, but was the battle between Radahn, General Radahn, and Malenia, Blade of Miquella, here in the Caelid Wilds. We know that the battle we don't know that the battle wrecked it. Radahn seems to be a defender in this case. Malenia, Blade of Miquella, is tied to the Rot and the Halig Tree, and we know that there was a draw here, that General Radahn fought Malenia and her Rot to a standstill here. So we're still learning more about that. And then there's the giants of Mount Gelmir. So I think we're on we are on Mount Gelmir now. I don't know where the giants are. There's some kind of mountaintop around here where the giants are. But the giants, in ancient times, they were mortal enemies of the Erd Tree. And during the Shattering, they fought one of the most destructive battles here. Oh, we got this nice little Rune's increased weather where the Erd Tree's leaves are floating down or something. So we know that this battle in the War of the Giants took place in Mount Gelmir here, a zone I haven't really touched beyond just entering it briefly. We know that it was centered around something called the Flame of the Fell God, or the Flame of Rune, which I assume are the same, but they may not be. I don't know who the Fell God is, but this fire that the giants used to oppose the Erd Tree was capable of burning it. It's capable of burning the Erd Tree. And so afterwards, because the Golden Order seems to have won, the flame was locked away in the mountaintops of the giants. It's burning up there. That's got to be some kind of bosses up there. And fire monks were set to guard it. So we know that it's up there or somewhere up there in the mountains, and we'll be dealing with it at some point. But yeah, that's the War of the Giants. So then there's the story of Castle Morn. During the Shattering, we know there was a siege of Castle Morn, that Godfrey and his army charged around and they besieged the... I think this was even before the Shattering, because... yeah, I think this was before the Shattering, because during the Shattering... and this I didn't touch on, but during the Shattering, I think Godfrey was already gone because the demigods who were fighting with each other were each trying to become Elden Lord, which I don't get, because Elden Lord is husband to Marika, and aren't they Marika's kids? But I don't know. I don't know the land between view on that sort of thing, but that's my best understanding. But anyway, so I think the fact that they were vying to become Elden Lord, or trying to become Elden Lord, maybe, was a sign that this happened even before that. But anyway, at some point in the pre-Tarnished era, there was the Siege of Castle Morn, and all we hear about here are stories of revenge. That there was a lone hero who fought for his vengeance in the Siege of Castle Morn and fell to Godfrey. The survivor was from a country now vanished, who claimed the swords of an entire clan of warriors and welded them all together. That was to form, where was this thing? Yeah, the grafted blade greatsword. Swear an oath upon the greatsword to avenge the clan, a revenger's weapon burdened with oceans of anger and regret. And we saw that when we got to here to the Weeping Peninsula, when we saw that there was a misbegotten rebellion against Godrick's soldiers who were in charge of the place. And they were slaves or servants. I'm not sure which, but boy, it feels like slaves. And I think, and I'm going to combine this also with language we heard from the harpy, from one of the singing harpies, who said, "Oh, that land formerly blessed, now withered. We had been destined for motherhood, but now have become disfigured. We wailed and wept, but no one comforts us. Golden one, at whom were you so angry?" So, what this makes me think is that there were a bunch of these kind of native groups. There were trolls in Stormvale and hawks in Stormvale, which we'll come back to. There were misbegotten, or whatever they were before they were misbegotten. Here, there were the harpy type things that we see around, and that when the Shattering happened, or maybe when the Golden Order went rampaging around, they kind of destroyed a lot of these and enslaved a lot of these. Put them in their own service, remodeled them in their own way. I think there's a lot of that going on. Oh, we somehow got runes. Yeah, and so I think that some of the anger we saw here, the rebellion, was revenge for, because if it was whatever was the misbegotten were besieged and destroyed, then maybe that's them taking revenge. I don't know. Now, this next section I want to get into is about this is almost one of the more complex things I've seen. Maybe just because I finished Liurnia, so I've seen a lot of it, but is the basics of the Carrion Royals and the Academy of Raya Lucaria. I was really confused when playing through this about it, but I think I have a better grasp on it now. So, a little bit about the structure. Who are the parties involved in this side of things? There's the Carrion Royal family. Rennala was the queen, but she also was... it's not like that she was the queen as part of a long line. She established the House of Caria as royalty. She was tied to the moon, to astrology. She had a couple of princesses, Rani, daughter of Rennala, but then someone else. I think we'll get into that. But there were two princesses, but now there was only one princess, Rani, daughter of Rennala. So that's the Carrion royal family. There were the Carrion knights who served them, heroes that were appointed by Rennala. They were direct retainers to the princesses. Troll knights were among them. E.g., I think, was one of those. Maybe not, but we've seen a bunch of those enchanted troll knights running around. Separate from the Carrion royal family and the Carrion knights, because their role was to govern the Academy of Raya Lucaria, but they were separate from it. They could have different agendas, and they worked in harmony sometimes, but they weren't the same. The Academy of Raya Lucaria was the magic school there off in the distance, governed by the Carrion royal family, somehow associated with the stars, while the Carrion royal family is more associated with the moon. I don't quite know what that's all about yet. And we know the Order of the Cuckoo were knights that served the Academy. So the Carrion Knights served the royal family. The Order of the Cuckoo served the Carrion Knights served the Carrion royal family. The Order of the Cuckoo served the Academy. Cuckoo seemed more about like fake sorceries and kind of like being sorceress knights who were just like doing their best, like Magitech knight sort of things, rather than actual sorcerers. So we've set up the stage with who the parties are, but the real heart of what happened during the Shattering, I think, was centered around this woman, Queen Rennala of the Full Moon, who we fought at the end of the Academy here, where she's in this library, but it's not a throne room, really. She's locked in here. She's trapped in here. And all this centers around before the Shattering and before the Shattering, her marriage and her divorce here. And some mysteries around it that I'm still not sure about. So she's known as the Full Moon Witch. She's very tied to the idea of being of the full moon. In youth, she was a prominent champion who charmed the Academy with her lunar magic. And it also says she encountered an enchanting moon when she was young, and later it would bewitch the Academy. So saying someone encountered an enchanting moon when she was young, that's very strange. That makes it seem, it feels very Bloodborne-y. Like a little bit about what you hear or behind Ludwig and the Moonlight Greatsword, like someone who encountered this mystery, that kind of this starry moony mystery that have served as a whisperer, guiding light or something for her. But it gave her some kind of power. And in the past, before the wedding, they obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. So they do seem to be... The moon seems to be opposed to the Golden Order in some way. But then Radahn was... And we also know that, Rennala is not a demigod. She's not even a demigod. She was just a person who got some kind of extra power from the moon and from her new husband, I think. Like the amber egg that holds the Great Rune, which, whoops, I took. This was not initially hers. It belonged to Radahn initially. So she was just kind of a non-demigod who was gifted this, and he was holding on to it. The next piece of this is where Radahn comes in. Radahn is a red-haired wolf demigod, as best I understand, who is from the Golden Order, the Erd Tree, the Golden Lineage, something like that. I think he's from that side of things. He's definitely from that side of things. He was rampaging, I think, on behalf of Godfrey, and he came here in an act of territorial aggression at the head of a great golden host to Liurnia. He was attacking the Academy, just being a big old shit. And he fought Lady Rennala in battle, and then he repented. He fought her, and I don't think he was defeated, or I don't know if he was defeated or charmed, but we know that he was enchanted by her. Figuratively, literally, I'm not sure, but he was enchanted by her. They were married, joining the moon and the Erd Tree, joining the houses of the moon, the Carrion royal family, and the house of the Erd Tree, the Golden Order. Which is nice and all, but then when Godfrey left the lands between, after he was divested of his grace and he was sent off, the first Elden Lord Godfrey was sent off by Queen Marika, somehow Radahn returned to Lanedale. And actually, Radahn, I think, was a champion, not a demigod. Maybe he was, I don't know, maybe he was both, I don't know. He was at least a champion, but he returned. So when Godfrey left, he then left here. He left his marriage to Queen Rennala and went to Lanedale and married Queen Marika as the second Elden Lord and King Consort. And this was weird. Muriel here was surprised that a mere champion was chosen for the seat of Elden Lords. So apparently Radahn was not a demigod. He was just a champion. Why he was chosen, I don't know. And why he left Rennala for Marika, I don't know. Is it just a better deal? Is there a nicer bedroom there? Is it more power? I don't know. But Radahn is going to come up again at some point. Probably in Lanedale. And he's probably going to have sorcery, because he studied sorcery with Rennala, and he studied incantations with Marika. So he's got a variety of powers I expect to see. When Radahn left, Rennala became despondent. I think she just, like, fell apart. And we saw then that those at the Academy... So what I saw in the Queen's Crown was this little bit of lore. Then those at the Academy realized that Rennala was no champion after all. And I just feel awful for her. I feel really bad for her. She seemed to get... Because after that, I guess they felt she wasn't a good queen because she was so distraught by her husband suddenly leaving for the mom, or so. Still don't really know. And so that's why the surcoat I'm wearing right now, the Knights of the Cuckoo, they were opposed to the Carrion Knights. The Academy of Raya Lucaria rebelled, tried to get new leadership, and they locked Queen Rennala away in the library. They attacked Carrion Manor, like the kind of the little home of Carrion royalty. And yeah, there was a giant battle there. The Carrion Knights did stay loyal to the Carrion royal family, so it was just the Academy and their Order of the Cuckoo rebelling, who were fighting against the Carrion royal family. There are all these schools of sorcery that we've read about from the Carrions. The Carolus school, the Olivinus, they call them the Conspectus. All these different conspectuses that study different things and focus on different things. But there's a couple I want to mention right now. First is the Crystal Cadre, because a lot of these are focused on like the stars or meteors or something like that. But there's the Crystal Cadre, who pursued the wisdom of stone, the secrets locked in the faint cogitations of the Crystallians. So there is some other alien group at this, even as far back as that old time, called the Crystallians, that we fought a couple of them, these inorganic living beings, these beings made of crystal, that we've heard are revered guests of the sorcerers and swore a concord, a pact with the Carrion royal family themselves. I don't quite know what they're about. They don't seem that dangerous. They're pretty easy enemies, all in all. But we've heard someone in game said they yearn for the return of their creator, who will carve for them new brethren. So yeah, they're like puppets brought to life, inorganic crystalline puppets brought to life, but who have a pact that has given magical power to the Carrion royal family in some way. I also want to talk about the Graven School, who is, we've heard, called a nightmare of the Academy, who seem some kind of villainous group. It's a forbidden tradition of glintstone sorcery. We've seen, throughout the game, we've seen these enemies that are like giant collections of heads. Let me see if we can find one. Yeah, this thing. Oh, what was that? Oh, some books. This thing. This seems to be some kind of act of graven sorcery. The act of collecting sorcerers to fashion them into the seeds of stars. Something else I want to bring up here is rot. Because we know there's the scarlet rot. We know there's a god of rot out there. We know there's Miquella the Empyrean. And we know there's Malenia, Blade of Miquella. So the god of rot is something that we heard was locked away. That there was some blind swordsman at one point who locked away, or at least legend has it, locked away the god that was rot itself. I think the god of rot is female also, because there were butterflies from the swamp of Ionia I found that are said to be mythologically, at least, the wings of the goddess of rot. So This is where I'm a bit confused, because I thought that Miquella the Empyrean was being set up because Malenia is all about rot and serves Miquella. And so I thought, is Miquella the god of rot? But Miquella is marked as male, and the god of rot is marked as female, so there might be something else going on. But there are also servants of rot who have some kind of poison spawn cycle of rebirth. So rot is a force in the world. It clearly is. Even back then. Yeah, so Miquella is an interesting one. Miquella is marked as a beguiling demigod who's beloved, but also knows how to forcefully compel affection. So, I mean, that signals Miquella as some kind of bad guy in some way. Or, boy, I mean, forcefully compelling affection is bad. Like, don't do that. So, like, I mean, unless it's just a way to say how charismatic he was, but the way they put it certainly puts him in a villainous light. Yeah, so I thought he was the same thing as the God of Rot, but I don't think so anymore. But we do know that Malenia is the Blade of Miquella. She's also known as the Severed, perhaps due to a prosthetic arm blade, it looks like. Maybe it's a disability or chronic illness. We know that she was born into the rot. It's not like she signed up for Team Rot voluntarily. She was born into some kind of rot from which she never knew relief. And so I'm taking that as, again, she was almost like just a chronic illness of some kind. But there's a lot there. She's served by clean rot knights who use holy magic as well as maybe rot stuff, but I don't understand. And she's also apparently very skilled. She's undefeated. She beat Godrick. She's known for a beautiful and relentless blade, and she fought Radahn to a standstill here in Caelid. So yeah, she's definitely going to come up again. And I think this is something that I think that she's like a big boss in this game. Like I think it's just something that has filtered down to me just from being in the world. So I think that she is at some point a boss. So on to some of the other entities I'll touch on about who were in the ancient world, who were there, who existed, but were other than the Golden Order, or apart from it. There was death. Death and those who live in death who came later. We know it's visually tied to thorns. We know it's a thing. We know that there were ancient death hexes, and ghost flame was a thing, and death birds were deities in some way, or malevolent deities, or viewed as malevolent deities. We know that there's necromancers. It's a whole thing, though. I think it came about largely after the Shattering. We also know that dragons were a thing. There seemed to be two versions of dragons that we've heard about or seen. There were the old ancient dragons and newer dragons. Ancient dragons ruled in a prehistoric era before the Erd Tree, and they were known for defensiveness, stone scales, but the newer dragons lost their stone scales. Something in their evolution made them more vulnerable. We've seen new dragon hearts riddled with gravel stone, and so I think that's just like elements of the old stone scales just kind of still peppering them, still part of them. But Godrick called the dragon he had grafted a trueborn heir. But that dragon was probably one of the newer dragons, so that was just Godrick being a little bit extra, I think. I don't think it was an actual ancient dragon. I think it was just one of the newer dragons he could get his hands on. So this is here in Noxtella, where one of the Eternal Cities, because these were thriving civilizations, I think, before the Erd Tree and the Golden Order rose. They don't seem like, the people here don't seem that happy about it, but I don't know what happened or who that skeleton is, if that's one of the ancient rulers of Noxtella, but it certainly looks like it was a person at one point. Most of it seems to be underground, between the rivers that flow of the Ainsel and the Siofra. Nokron Eternal City and Noxtella the Eternal City. We know that it fought against the greater will and its vassal fingers, that it was tied to the moon and stars, but it seems to be, I don't know if it's a different kind of moon and stars, because it's all underground and more artificial than the moon and stars that we saw, that the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carrion royal family were all about. So close, but maybe not necessarily the same. We also knew that there were dragons as part of here, but they seem to be like artificial dragons, like dragonkin, who used artificial magic, like artificial ice and lightning, and did their best, but they kind of were messed up a bit. They like couldn't really. They were kind of. They were called. They were just specifically in the game. They're called decrepit, pale imitations of their skyborn kin. They had priests here. They were dynastic. It was a whole civilization here, but I don't know why they were. Yeah, they just seemed outwardly hostile to the Erdtree, as opposed to some of the people who've lived down here, who are the ancestral followers we saw in the last in the last couple of videos, who were like nature-focused, spiritual, focused on worshiping a beast, a worshipped beast that became an ancestral spirit, which we fought. They were wary of the Erdtree. I think they are. I get the sense that they were all about a cycle of life, about like a cycle of life using their own magic, and they kind of backed off from dealing too much with the Erdtree because I think something about the Golden Order would have messed with that cycle of rebirth they were all about. We also know that the stars, whether these stars or the stars in the night sky, used to be a force to be reckoned with. And that's something we're probably going to be dealing with in Caelid with the Star Scourge Radahn. Astrology used to be a big thing as opposed to sorcery now. The stars in night sky once dictated fate, but the Golden Order somehow fettered it. We've seen over and over the night sky no longer cradles fate. Once upon a time, the stars of the night sky guided fate. The fate once written in the night skies has been fettered by the Golden Order. So it used to be a power, but something about Radahn, about Radahnn's actions stopped it from, arrested it. We've heard also about omens. When I first fought Margit the Fell Omen, I assumed that, like, Margit being here was an ill omen for me. Like, him being here was a bad sign for me. He was the Fell Omen. But no, the omens were an actual people in the past. They were accursed, they were opposed to the Golden Order, and they were shackled by them. Now, they have bony knots on their heads that were protective symbols. And so I think that there's this sense of the primordial crucible giving birth to all these different peoples, and I think that the omens' bony parts on their head are somehow evolved versions, like weaker versions that used to be like the ancient dragon's stones or the misbegotten. We see them on the misbegotten, like just things that are now protective and scattered around, but used to be really protective. One more note on the Eternal Cities. The Eternal Cities seem to have poked their heads above ground too. This whole image of people holding tablets is something that was prevalent down in the Eternal Cities, and the Old Palace and Old Palace ruins are related to them. So the Eternal Cities did seem to poke their heads out at some point, even if mostly they're underground. But the main reason I'm here right now is because this mausoleum. Because the mausoleum seemed to be tied to one other power that we've heard briefly about, called the Soulless Demigod. The mausoleum, this is a ghost outside in the Weeping Peninsula, said the mausoleum prowls, cradling the soulless demigod. O Marika, Queen Eternal, he is your unwanted child. And not only, it came up once more from one of my ashes, Lootle the Headless. Where are you, Lootle? Lootle the Headless sacrificed her life so she could continue to protect a soulless demigod until their revival. So there is some kind of soulless demigod in play. What it is, I don't know, but it's tied to the mausoleums. There was also a pre-Godrick power at Stormvale Castle, which I think was like a literal hawk. We've heard that I think the hawks were similar to how I think the Misbegotten were once kind of lived in Castle Morn. I think the hawks once ruled in Stormvale. We keep seeing that, yeah, that the hawks were there was a named hawk, Stormhawk Dean, who rendered service to the old king of Stormvale. We know that there was, we found the ashes of an old Stormhawk king who wouldn't answer who wouldn't be summoned by me, who I gave to Nefeli Lu, who has some tie to it. Yeah, we know that. I think that they were just like the Misbegotten, that they were defeated by the Golden Order, mutilated, and turned into a servant class in a castle ruled by someone who was part of the Golden Order. Yeah, the poor hawks, those jerks who were trying to kill me. I feel bad for them now. And then there's the Three Fingers. This feels like it's going to be a pretty major antagonist. So the Three Fingers, I think Three Fingers are Shabriri. I could be wrong. They could be different entities. But Shabriri, they're tied together, certainly. Shabriri, we know, is the most reviled man in all of history. His eyes were gouged out as punishment for slander. What slander? I don't know. But the fact that being frenzied and frenzied magic is about being the Three Fingers makes me assume that they're just the exact opposite, or that they're a major opposing force to the Two Fingers and the Guide and Grace. We know that the Three Fingers, like whatever the entity is, the Three Fingers, maybe it's, again, like three actual fingers, or maybe it's someone named Shabriri, or Shabriri turned into the Three Fingers. We know that the Three Fingers is beneath Lanedale as well, where Godwyn, Prince of Death, is. There might be some relation, or maybe it's just a big containment facility down under Lanedale. I don't know. They're all about incinerating all that divides and distinguishes. Let chaos take the world. And let chaos take the world sounds like the polar opposite of the Golden Order, trying to bring reason to everything. So then there's the coming of the Tarnished, me and my brethren here at Roundtable Hold. Grace abandoned us at some point. We were sent to the Fog, which I don't know if it's an afterlife or a physical location that's far away. I kind of lean towards the latter, but I'm not sure. We're the dead who yet live, so we died at some point and came back. And now long-lost Grace speaks to us. And all this, again, lines up really neatly with the legends we've heard of Godfrey's, the first Elden Lord's exile, and his troops being divested of grace, and then dying and coming back and fighting and getting their grace back. So that really matches up with this, but it could be a coincidence. Our main goal here is to cross the fogs of the lands between, seek the Elden Ring. So the Two Fingers are prodding us in all this, to become the Elden Lord, to seek the Erdtree, gain an audience with Queen Marika, become Elden Lord, join her as consort, and restore the Golden Order. That's what they want. What we want, we'll see, but that's what they want of us. They want to restore the Golden Order. So after the Shattering, when the demigods warred, none of them could become Elden Lord. And so as a result, the Two Fingers were like, all right, we need some backup. And so they turned to Plan B, which is us. Because I think they just need someone to be Elden Lord to break through so that the Golden Order can get its power, get its mojo back. So a little bit the clergy we've seen here, because we've seen a lot about the Two-Finger clergy. Finger Maidens. So at the top of it is the Finger Reader here. Enya the Finger Reader, who it's said to live eternally. One was supposed to be a wet nurse to royalty. Someone who was there succoring the Golden Order. I don't know who. I assume Enya is the only Finger Reader I've met, I think. Hello. And they're the voice of the Two Fingers. So, like in the hierarchy, there's Grace, The two fingers are like the kind of enforce the will of grace. The readers interpret for them, and they like tell us what to do. So kind of shit rolls downhill, they say. We've seen finger reader crones are like people who just are old women. I think they're mostly old women around along the path of grace to help guide me and give me like spoilers and tips as I go to find my way to become Elden Lord, so encouraging me along that path. And then there's finger maidens. Finger maidens who serve the two fingers, of course, and aid a chosen tarnished. So yeah, I think they're like meant to be linked up with one of us in particular. Like maybe a bunch of us will get a finger maiden assigned to us to help us along. Just another support system. And then there's darker parts of the two fingers. Like we've heard about finger assassins who would eliminate tarnished who strayed from guidance. Confessors who were, again, like twin blade wielding monsters who did the will of the two fingers. And some people have talked about the two fingers being a burden on the tarnished and shackling us. Yeah. So that all brings me to my story, to where the game started, which I'm going to probably rip through a little bit, just things at each chapter of the game as I'm dividing it up that jumped out at me that I want to talk about. So our first big task was to get the first great rune, the rune of Godrick the Grafted. Godrick was a decrepit demigod at this point by the time we came into the picture. And during the fight, once we got to him, he was still in denial about his defeat and really about his state of being. He was the Lord of all. He called himself the Lord of all that is golden, and he's like the distant cousin who kind of sucks of all that is golden. Maybe that's more accurate. I wasn't sure who this was because it's so distinctly not the Godrick I saw. But again, while playing with my friend Proustian, she mentioned a theory that I agree with, that this axe-wielding beefcake with the lion is who, kind of a mixture of what Godrick used to be and who he sees himself as. Yeah, the lion is, we saw a little bit, in the castle courtyard, which was just kind of this grafted. It was a lion. It was still a lion, but it had like swords attached to its arms, and it was kind of rough. It was strong, but it was not looking that happy. Yeah, so we got the great rune from Godrick, and that was the first thing. So some other things about this first chapter I noticed, or that I wanted to touch on. The demi-humans we came across, they were fighting Godrick's soldiers a lot. They were kind of beastly looking. And I think they were just another of those pre-Golden Order peoples that were corrupted when the Shattering hit. That were somehow hurt or cursed and harmed when the Shattering hit. We've met a lot of Godrick's troops who were like wearing those red and green beast and tree surcoats. The beast, the Erd tree, the tree is the Erd tree, the beast representing Godfrey's power as first Elden Lord. There's this recurring thorn motif here that his troops have from the curse. I think, again, my theory is that it's the curse of the Knight of Black Knives, the Knight of the Black Knives and the Death of Godwyn in their neighborhood, like kind of rippled out and just messed everyone up. And we've seen, again, just exiled troops, banished troops all over. The Wings of the Storm were two particular knights who we saw, two banished knights, one of whom served Godrick, the other of whom didn't, who kind of did his own thing. And we even know Edgar, the Castellan Edgar, Irina's father, was back in Castle Morn, was back in the Weeping Peninsula, was also a banished knight. While in Eastern Limgrave, we met Kenneth Height over here. So Kenneth, this is an ongoing quest line. Kenneth is some kind of Erd Tree royalty. He's some kind. I don't think he's. I don't know if he's a cousin of Godrick or what he or how it exactly works, but he's some kind of Erd-free royalty who sees himself as the rightful ruler of Limgrave. We're next in line, but something I don't quite understand about him still is that when we retook his fort on his behalf, he seems to now want to find someone else to knock my water over. He seems to want to find someone else to rule Limgrave. Someone he calls a true and stalwart lord of the proper lineage. I don't know who that is, but he wants someone to rule Limgrave. I don't know why. Maybe he's... It could be that his fortress was wrecked, and so he just feels bad about it, like he doesn't deserve to rule anymore, but that feels like a pretty pathetic reason, and I don't buy it. I don't buy that that's what he thinks. So we'll see more about him. Boy, Margit the Fell Omen. I don't know what to make of Margit. He was the boss who guarded Stormvale Castle. There's no way he's dead. He had a whole speech after he disappeared to us. Coward fear of the night. The hands of the Fell Omen shall brook thee no quarter. He's coming back at some point. He's got to be coming back at some point. So the second great room we went after was Rennala's, where we fought our way through Liurnia and the academy here, and we fought her and defeated her, but clearly didn't kill her, because she's right here. She has a rune of rebirth. She's, like, all about rebirth. She's not dying anytime soon. I think... I mean, the fight was very confusing with her. During her fight, her golden egg cracked open, spewed black smoke everywhere, and transformed the room. She had various ashes she was summoning, spirits she was summoning on her behalf, a dragon, lone wolf. She was just summoning ashes, like I would. I don't have a dragon, but, you know. And Ronnie spoke up, and we'll cover Ronnie like immediately after this, but Ronnie spoke up also during the Rennala fight, where she was saying, "Mother's rich slumber shall not be disturbed by thee. Send word far and wide, the last queen of Caria, Rune, Rennala of the full moon, and the majesty of the night she conjureth." And when she died, or when she was defeated, she said, "O little Ronnie, my dear daughter, weave thy night into being." So she is counting on Ronnie to do something. What? I don't know, but she's counting on Ronnie to do something. One theory I have here. I don't think this is a particularly good theory, but it's a theory I've been thinking about and wanted to toss out there and see if the cat licks it up. She keeps talking about Ronnie as little Ronnie. Rennala does. And she's super obsessed with rebirth and with cradling this golden egg of rebirth. We also know that Ronnie or Renna is like is an entity with multiple names, multiple there's the main body, and then there's like a ghostly half sticking out of it. We know there were two princesses, now there's one. What if one of the sisters died as a baby? And that's why Rennala is all about like cradling this egg and practicing rebirth and trying to get people rebirthed over and over. And maybe that's why this version, one of the versions of her daughters, is like maybe that's like the sister of Ronnie is like kind of this ghostly version sticking out of her, like a half-formed, like false rebirth attempt, who kind of grew up as a spirit ghost thing. That's one possible guess. Then there's Ronnie here, who is one of the game's major players, who's currently giving me the silent treatment, maybe because I'm supposed to be off helping Blythe. But Ronnie / Renna, because she has multiple names. Can we see her little ghostly form here? Yeah, we can. We can see the ghostly face there on her right side. They're sleeping, I think. Yeah. She's a self-described witch. She has this tattoo scar on her right side, a ghostly second part. So she was Rena when I first met her in Limgrave, when she first gave me a spirit bell. But she referred to herself as Ranni the Witch more generally, like aside from that time. Like when I first met her here, she said here in Liurnia, she said, I believe I said my name was Rena when last we met, as if she's not sure. If she said her name was Rena, maybe it sounded a little bit like someone with like multiple personalities who's somewhat aware of what the other personality does, trying to cover. Like, what did I tell you last time? I probably told you I'm Ranni. Anyway, I'm Rena. Or like, I told you I was Rena. I'm actually Ranni anyway. Yeah, so a snowy crone at one point taught Ranni to fear the dark moon as she imparted cold sorcery. So if her mother is associated with the full moon, she's associated with the dark. Ranni is associated with the dark moon. I'm in her service. I'm joined her service, whether it's a good idea or bad idea or not. It sounds like a fun idea. And I really do think she was the one behind the Night of the Black Knives, because she said she stole death long ago. And so she says she's now searching for the dark path. So I think this means that she is searching for the dark path of the Empyrean. The Empyrean is Miquella. And let me just make sure of this. I think, yeah, we know that Miquella is associated with the Halig tree. And so I think that the dark path she's looking for is the path to the Halig tree. She wants to somehow get there to do a thing. And I think that's what right now I'm searching for, but I don't really know. Also supporting this idea that she might have initiated the Night of the Black Knives is one of the ghosts in the Carrion Study Hall said was praying to obscure, like, oh, Celestial Globe, obscure forever the transgressions of the princess. So I think it's known that the princess did some shady shit. I want to talk about the other servants of the princess, Ranni, Rena. I think they all call her Ranni, so I'll go with Ranni for now. Of the princess of Lady Ranni, E.G., Blythe, and Seluvis. E.G. and Blythe are bros, and I like them both. Seluvis is an utter condescending jackwagon and one of the creepier characters in the game, which is saying something. So Blythe is the half-wolf, sworn sword to Ranni, Lady Ranni's stepbrother. So Blythe, I think that means Blythe is Radahgon's son. So Radahn is still out there. He's still being Elden Lord. I think he's the current Elden Lord. Or maybe he was the most recent. Oh, we don't know anything about what happened to Radahn. Presumably the role of Elden Lord is up for grabs, which means that something happened to Radahn since he became Elden Lord that stopped him from being that, but I don't know what. But anyway, Blythe is Radahgon's son, I think. And honest to a fault, very good guy. E.G. here, also a bro. I like E.G. Troll blacksmith, Lady Ranni's war counselor, very protective of her. It's really Preceptor Seluvis who's the one with full of even more mysteries and creepiness. He's all about puppets and dolls, and he seems tied closely to the ongoing story of Sellen, which we'll definitely get to. He also seems like he's trying to kill. I think he's personally trying to would not be opposed to killing Blythe if he can get away with that without Ranni knowing. We saw, I mean, the wolf helm that we often wear in this playthrough was something we found behind Preceptor Seluvis's tower. Where is this? Here we are. But it's a mask fashioned after the head of the Black Wolf. A relic of an assassin who assumed the guise of Ranni the Witch's loyal shadow. The likeness is striking. So this is someone who tried to... No, it wouldn't be. He wouldn't be trying to kill... You don't use the face of someone you're trying to kill. You use the face of someone who trusts the person, who's trusted by the person you're trying to kill. Why? So Seluvis had some assassin impersonate Blythe to kill someone else. I don't know who, though, but that's still out there. Nefeli Lu is someone that Celivis tried to mess with. I don't know why yet. But Nefeli Lu, I think, is... The more I've watched these old videos, the more I think Nefeli Lu is crucial to the storyline in some way. I think she is also specifically tied to the old Stormhawk people, of the old Stormhawk rulers and groups back in Stormvale Castle. Because I gave her the Stormhawk King ashes, like the one who wouldn't answer to me, and she took to it. And so we know that she's the daughter, I'm pretty sure she's the daughter of one of the people we've heard about, Horlu, a Tarnished of the Badlands, Chieftain of the Badlands. And so I think she's tied to that, but I think those are probably some exiled Stormhawk faction that she's a part of. Anyway, Celivis wanted me to give her a potion that would mess with her, that would probably turn her into a puppet based on what Gideon said. I didn't do it, and I got a puppet of my own, but I don't know what he wanted exactly with her. And don't tell me, spoilers and all that. I don't. That's one of those mysteries that's still out there for me. Speaking of Nefeli, one of the other major things that happened in this second chapter, the hunt for, in the Liurnia chapter here, the hunt for the Raya Lucaria, second Great Rune, is the village of the Albinaurics, the massacre here. So the Albinaurics are these weird, blobby, super pale and white beings who are just all over this place. Most are not in great shape. Why do some characters, by the way, have these burning eyes? Yeah, like they're not doing great. They bleed white. They like this white stuff. Anyway, oh, we got a bunch of them crawling our way. Speaking of Massacre of the Albinaurics, anyway, the Albinaurics are these life forms made by human hands. I think personally they were specifically made by Rennala with her rebirthing. They are very much on Team Haligtree. The Haligtree is like their chosen land. They are seen as impure because they haven't been touched by the Erdtree's grace, and the Haligtree is their chosen land. So the Haligtree isn't necessarily, it's the the dark path of the Empyrean and all that, but like I don't think it's all bad. I really don't. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So at first, this was all sparked by Sir Gideon, one of the main Tarnished. He wanted the Haligtree secret medallion. I'm pretty sure, yeah. He wanted the Haligtree secret medallion. He first went to Latenna the Albinauric, an Albinauric at the Slumbering Wolf Shack here, with a great doggo named Lobo. And when we talked to her, she was assaulted, attacked for her part of the Haligtree secret medallion. She was hunted by an all-hearing brute, which we keep hearing, all-hearing brute. And Gideon is the all-knowing. So I'm guessing that it was Gideon's, and especially because Nefeli was here. So yeah, I'm almost certain that Gideon sent a party here to raid the village of the Albinaurics to try to find this Haligtree secret medallion. I don't know what he wants at the Haligtree. And Nefeli was here, but I think she was supposed to be doing the massacring, but instead she was fighting off the massacres. She was fighting off the group that was doing it. She grew up. She was disgusted by her role there. She grew up seeing all sorts of awful stuff, and she saw this as more of the same. She didn't want to be a part of it. So we got the Haligtree secret medallion piece here from one of the hiding Albinaurics. We brought it back to Latenna, and Latenna basically thanked us, turned into a spirit, and joined our fight. But her goal is to get to the Haligtree. So she basically voluntarily turned herself into a spirit. And so I'm going to try to bring her, my wonderful Lieutenant of the Albinaric, to the Haligtree and honor her there. Speaking of Gideon being what one might call a sussy baka, is around this time we came back here to Roundtable Hold and got attacked by this guardian of Gideon's, who I'm dressed as right now, whose armor I'm wearing, known as Ensha the Royal Remains. Any other gear I have from him? Yeah, let's get fully dolled up in his weird skeleton outfit. Why not? So Ensha guarded Gideon. He just kind of growled and was silent. I don't quite get what he was about. The Royal Remains seems to imply that he's some kind of zombie king. That he used to be a king and now he's a zombie, and he's I don't know, I think he's kind of wearing his own armor. That's my best guess. Because we saw in the armor that the bones of this armor belong to an ancient lord, the Soulless King. The Lord of the Lost and the Desperate, known as Ensha. Don't know what that's about. Yeah, so he attacked me. Non-rhetorical question. What was the trigger that actually caused this attack? Because I hadn't been to Roundtable Hold in the wild when he attacked me. What actually was the... Like, what was the event, the thing I did that if I came here after that thing would have caused Ensha to attack me? Was it getting, once I obtained the second rune? That's my guess, but I don't remember actually, or I don't know. But my guess is that Gideon wants to kill me eventually, because Gideon wants to be Elden Lord and probably sees me as a growing threat. And when Gideon apologized for Ensha's actions, he didn't say, sorry, he was wrong, you're safe. He said, sorry, Ensha got rather ahead of himself, which implies that Gideon wanted him to do it later, not just yet. And then we come to this third main chapter, which we're just pretty early in. I don't know, we're midway through, I think, which is trying for the third great rune, which is Radahn's over there down in Redmane Castle. We know Radahn is probably corrupted at this point. He's the strongest of the demigods. Over there in the there's this festival, a combat festival, where you get to fight Radahn at the end. And his army is still kind of all around here, but they're not in great shape. They have that red and blue lion surcoat we've seen. They have kind of a lion theme going on because Radahn, I guess, is lionish. Maybe he's an actual lion, the way that, like, Radagon's a wolf. I don't know. They're also staving off the Scarlet Rot with fire, so I really need to start, to try using fire at some point if I'm against Scarlet Rot-infused enemies. But the main overarching plot of this so far has been that Lady Ranni wanted me to get... the reason I'm going there isn't just to get the Great Rune. It's because Lady Ranni asked me and Blythe, because I'm her servant now, me and Blythe to go down and find the treasure of Nokron. Because Nokron is that city up there, I think. So Blythe and I went down here to the outskirts of the area, full of ancestral followers, and we just couldn't find the way up. Seluvis directed us to Sellen, Sorceress Sellen, who we'll cover in a bit, who directed us even farther to... who said that we had to go to Caelid. That the reason we couldn't go there is because Caelid, because the path of the stars has been arrested by General Radahn, and if General Radahn were to die, the stars would resume their movement, and so too would Ranni's destiny. So I don't know what that means, but somehow Ranni's destiny is locked in place. Maybe that's just a poetic way of saying that Ranni's destiny, for Ranni to achieve her goals, we have to get to Nokron, and we can't do that until Radahn dies. So that's why we're heading to Caelid to kill Radahn. I don't know what that's actually going to look like. Or maybe it might just be like a magic starlight bridge opens up, that, or a portal opens up that lets us get there, or elevator opens up that lets us get there. Maybe something like that. But something about the stars will open up if we kill Radahn. Oh, I almost forgot. The jars. So Alexander the warrior jar. So Alexander is the warrior jar we met, who has that jolly Darwinistic vibe to him, who we met in Limgrave, who seems to be some amalgamation of actual, like, the souls or meat of warriors kind of stuffed inside him. He started out in the wonderful town of Jarburg, but he doesn't intend to return. His goal is to get to Redmane Castle for that combat festival, and I hope we don't have to fight him, but I fear we will. So hopefully we'll see him in Redmane as a friend. So I want to talk briefly about the future areas we've heard a little bit about, where the other two great ruins are being held. First is here in Volcano Manor, where we briefly got a tour of the Inquisition chambers, with Praetor Rykard, known for a serpentine demeanor. He committed the sin of blasphemy and is said to be unforgivable. I wonder if he's related to Shabriri, but I kind of don't think so. Shabriri is all about frenzy, and the Three Fingers are all about frenzy and yellow magic, and Praetor Rykard seems about fire and poison and snake aesthetics, from what I hear about the serpentine demeanor and all that. So I don't know. At some point we'll be back here in Volcano Manor. We were first introduced to it, or given an invitation to it, rather, by a woman named Raya in Liurnia, who welcomed us there. How sweet of her. Yeah, so she wants us to be here to fight amongst a family of champions, but I don't trust her. I don't think she's being sus, but I think Praetor Rykard, there's no way he's not sus as hell. We'll also deal with the giants and some of their allies, the fire monks. The monks are kind of interesting. The fire monks we've heard about, who guard the flame that the giants held, the flame of ruin. It sounds like they were initially set to guard it, but they came to worship it. Like maybe it's a stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares back at you, sort of thing. So, yeah, it sounds like they were initially trying to stop the flame, but now they're worshiping it. And then there's this last section, the Lanedale, the royal capital, Morgoth the Great, led by Morgoth the Grace-Given. I'm not sure about how the hierarchy works here. We know that Radahn is or was Elden Lord. Maybe he's not there anymore. And Morgoth is the Lord of Lanedale, but maybe it's sort of like how the President of the United States is in D.C., but there's also a mayor of D.C. who, is Lord of D.C., but he's not the president. So maybe Morgoth is like the mayor of D.C., and the Elden Lord is like the president of the U.S. I don't know. Another thing here in Lanedale is dragons. We know that during the War of the Dragons, there was a battle between Godwyn the Golden and Fortisax, one of these dragons. Maybe this is even Fortisax for all I know, or the ruins of Fortisax. Probably not, though. This looks pretty dead. And that, much like how probably not the exact same way. God, pigeon's fur is all over my face. Much like how when Radahn fought Rennala and then came to kind of marry her afterwards, I don't think Godwyn married Fortisax. That would be quite something. Very Heaven's Word from Final Fantasy XIV. But at some point... Hey, goodbye, you furry monster. At some point, they became friends. Fortisax became friends with Godwyn, and there was a dragon cult that arose as a result of that friendship here in Lanedale. So for this last section of the video, of this way too long video that I apologize for. I don't really apologize for it. Hopefully you can skip around or just skip the video if you're not interested. I just wanted to get all this out there. I want to touch on kind of the remaining things, the NPC quests that I want, some of the NPC quests that are ongoing and thoughts on those. And just a couple, let me start with the other non-NPC quest things that are just out there. Miquella's Halig Tree. We know that we're searching for it to help bring the Albinarchs there, and presumably we know that Gideon is searching for it, and we know that Ranni and that lady, I think Lady Ranni is searching for it, to follow the dark path of the Empyrean, whatever that means. There's two parts to it. One we got from Latenna and Albus, and the second we have to get beyond the Forbidden Lands north of the Erd Tree in Castle Sol on the mountaintops of the Giants. So that's one we'll get along the way, I hope. Yeah, Castle Sol, we've heard, is a frosty castle in the distant north. I think there's a couple of frost things there that have jumped out at me. The snowy crone who taught Ranni is probably from there. I fought an ancient hero of Zamor in the Weeping Everjail, in the Weeping Peninsula, who was full of cold magic, so I'm guessing that Zamor is going to be up nigh there. And we also know that Kaiden is probably in snowy territory, because we've seen those berserker mercenaries from the mountaintops of the wintry north who are, again, Kaiden warriors. There's also a recurring character that keeps coming up is the Lord of Blood. Blood worship, people are fanatical about blood. The hell? I thought we killed all of these things. Speaking of the fanatical about the Lord of Blood. That was weird. Is that a recurring enemy? Does that always respawn here? Speaking of fanatics of the Lord of Blood. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the Lord of Blood is just a constant thing that keeps coming up. We know there was the knight in Limgrave who was obsessed with blood. The knight who took Kenneth Height's keep. Briars of Sin kept. Let me see. Let me find the Briars of Sin, because that was a big bloody thing. It was a blood-based sorcery. Guilty sorcerers and exiled criminals had their eyes gouged by thorns in there. Discovered the Blood Star. I think the Blood Star's got to be just like the Lord of Blood's power representative, or like seeing the burning bush, but the burning bush is blood. And we saw a shield that was like a thorny shield. That's venerated a maiden whose eyes were crushed by Briars of Sin before being reborn in the lands between. Yeah, so there's something about it keeps this ongoing theme of blind holy women. Yeah, so just ongoing blood stuff. Here specifically because, I mean, look at it. This whole church is like a blood church, which makes me almost certain that White Mask Vare is all about Lord of Blood as well. I mean, look at him. One of the more interesting quests that had come up was with Dee and Fia. Dee, Hunter of the Dead, and Fia, the deathbed companion here, who, was here before she murdered and fled. Sorry. Yeah, so Fia, I first met, she was in that initial roll call in the intro, like, "Rise, Fia, the deathbed companion." She has, like, vampire vibes, where it seems like from what she says about being a deathbed companion, it sounds like she drains vigor or warmth or heat or energy from people, from living people, and, like, passes them on to the dead to comfort them, maybe? The other party in this is D, Hunter of the Dead, who is a Deathroot hunting, anti those who live in death, Golden Order fundamentalist. Thea has a quest that she starts me on at this point to investigate a clue pointing to, like, a knife print clue related to the Knight of the Black Knives. I hunt down this clue, and I don't remember if I find some knife print. I guess something that was called evidence of the ritual and it hides the truth of the conspiracy. So I find some kind of clue to the Knight of the Black Knives. Thea takes this information and gives me a weathered dagger, which I have to imagine was used to kill. I have to imagine it was used to kill Godwin, because Fia's all about, well, we'll see Fia's all about Godwin. The dagger is silver and gold intertwined, but now it's kind of marred by a black gash. And so there were only two silver and gold, like, entwined images I know of. One is the ongoing symbol of Rennala's marriage to Radahn, the silver of Carrion royalty wedded to Radagonn's Golden Order. But the other is just the Hunter of the Dead, who is they got this weird silver chest armor thing relating to his twin brother. And so I gave the dagger to D because Thea says that she wants a certain person gifted it to her. And I think that certain person is Godwin, or Godwin, Prince of the Dead, and Prince of Death? Yeah, Prince of Death. And she says it has a special place in the owner's heart. So I think that just means she wants to find whoever had it and kill them. Plunge it in their hearts. She was being cute and jokey. She's quite a laugh. And I gave it to D because D recognized it. And I don't think it was D's, though. I think it was D's brother. It belonged to D's brother, but Thea interpreted D taking it as it belonging to D, I think, and killed D. So that was kind of her uncloaking herself, and she gives like a pro Godwin will rise speech. Disturb not the death of Godwin the Exalted. We who humbly live in death live in waiting to one day welcome our Lord. Our Lord will rise, Lord of the many and the meek. So she's trying to get Godwin to rise up again, and she's all, yay, Godwin. At some point, we'll find Dee's younger brother. It sounds like he lies. The note we found said that he lies in a deep sleep in the aqueduct besides Nokron. I didn't see him there when in the watery areas, but maybe that wasn't the aqueduct. Said that he stood before the Prince of Death near that spot. So maybe he did attack or kill Godwin. I don't know. Hugh and Roderica here have an interesting little relationship too. Roderica became a spirit tuner, but there was something I didn't see. I didn't see in my playthrough, but I just saw it when my friend discovered it, that I never found it, but I'm going to go here and see if I can find what my friend just found. Crimson Hood. I did not see this in my playthrough, just when she discovered it in hers. A hooded cloak of vivid crimson worn by expatriated royalty. Gifted to those who departed on journeys without specific orders to faraway lands from which they would never return. So made it easier for undesirables to be on their way. Roderica never once saw the guidance of grace. So she was banished in some way. She was exiled from something, and now she can see ghosts. She's spirit tuning. But I'm more interested in Hugh specifically. Hugh was found... When I found him, he was praying to Queen Marika for forgiveness. The road is yet long, a god is not easily filled, but one day without fail you will have your wish. Is he one of the people? Was he a Black Knife assassin? because it's a god is not easily felt. So he tried to kill a god on Marika's behalf, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't succeed, and now he's apologizing for it. I don't know. It might. It feels like the easy answer to all of this is so-and-so was behind the Knight of the Black Knives. You tried to kill Godwyn, but there's plenty of demigods you could have killed. He did say a god is not easily felled. Maybe that was just shorthand for a demigod. So I don't know what that was about yet. There was also why he decided to nurture Roderika's gift for spirit tuning, because he says he was indebted to a spirit tuner he met long ago, someone whose eyes Roderika reminds him of, and he's teaching Roderika to honor that past spirit tuner. Don't know who that was, but it does hint at some kind of... I don't know what it hints at. I really don't know. I don't know, but it's a mystery that's out there that I've been thinking about. There's also Melina. Melina, I have a couple of potential theories about. She's someone who's not a finger maiden, but she kind of plays one on TV. She offers to act as a finger maiden for me and help me out. Offers to take her, but her main goal is for two things. One, for me to take her to the foot of the Erd Tree where she was born, and two, to help her find her long ago lost purpose that her mother gave her inside the Erd Tree. So she's almost certainly Marika's daughter. I feel probably certainly Marika's daughter. She regularly channels Marika's words, and we know that she's burned and bodiless, that she's kind of ghosting around, that she's not a full person at the moment. She looks a lot like Renna, like Renna / Ronnie. She looks a lot like the main body of that witch, where they both have a burned eye, and so I feel like there's some kind of dark light mirror going on between Melina and Ronnie and Renna, but I don't know what. Oh my god, Patches. I want to talk about Patches real quick. Patches is a lying asshole, and I didn't notice until my rewatch of these videos. I mean, I know of course he's Patches. Of course he's going to be a liar, but specifically, he said that when I met him in Liurnia, he told me, I can't believe I didn't pick up on this. He told me that if I go to the Academy of Raya Lucaria and I find a way to get to the bottom of a water wheel deep in, there's an Iron Virgin, one of those horrifying Iron Maiden machines, that if you get eaten by it, will warp you to the beauty at the base of the Erd Tree. And just by coincidence, I'd forgotten about this, but by coincidence, I got sucked into it. And it put me in, like, the torture chambers of Volcano Manor. So, like, this is, again, just him being an asshole. I just didn't realize how much of an asshole he was being until I rewatched it. I also think Patches might be somehow tied to Volcano Manor, because he also suggested I talk to Rhea, who is associated with Volcano Manor. He was like, why don't you go talk to her? She might be nice to talk to. So he's trying to screw me over by kind of feeding me to Volcano Manor somehow. The actual last thing I want to talk about for this, again, overly long video that I just had to get out there, was Sorceress Sellen. I met her first here in Limgrave, where she took me on as an apprentice. And chronologically, kind of from what I hear about her, she was seen as initially a promising sorceress in the academy, incredibly promising, a prodigy. And eventually she was expelled from the academy as a reviled apostate witch, under the name of, accused of being the Graven Witch. And we've heard about, again, Graven sorceries are like those nightmare sorceries that turn sorcerers into fodder, into like some kind of mash them all together for power or something. But it's unclear whether she was doing that, especially because there's 3 of her right now. There's 3 versions of her around. And Sorcerer Thops, who is a pretty stand-up guy, said he still doesn't believe the accusations. The illustrious Sellen would never do such things. So he doesn't believe she was the Graven Witch. I don't know what to think of that. He could have been naive and talking about, on his idol. He could have been right. Maybe this isn't actually Sellen, because there's this version of her that's totally coherent and teaching sorcery and stuff. And there's also a version of her that's being tortured and shackled in the Witchbane ruins. And if she's supposed to be the Graven Witch, then, it's a ruin. They're ruins holding down the Graven Witch. So that would be why they're called the Witchbane ruins, her bane. And then there's the third one. There's the version of her that's like over here, where it's just kind of a puppet. It could just be just a sex doll for Preceptor Celivis, but I don't think that's the case. I think it has some other role, that kind of mute doll that he made of her. But it might not be. It might be just a sex thing. I don't know. So who is she? I really don't know. I've had theories about in the past, but I thought at one point maybe she was just being like a puppet of Preceptor Celivis, like where he was controlling her here and what he made her doll say, like she would say here. But when I came to Sellen here recently, she said she wasn't looking forward to seeing, it's Preceptor Celivis. I really didn't want to hear that name again. So they have some history, but it seems like she does have her own views of him. She's not just like, Preceptor Celivis, the most wonderful person in the land. Praise his name. Like, that would make me think she's a puppet. I don't know what she is now, though. I don't know what she is. I almost forgot about this guy. Gurranq, Beast Clergyman. Gurranq is... like so many of these, I don't really know what to make of him. He is working with D, Hunter of the Dead. But I think it's a symbiotic relationship. Then there's this guy, Gurranq, Beast Clergyman, here in the far east, in Greyall's Dragon Barrow, I think, where just all this bloodborne-ass, shackled beasts, statues all over the place, trying to break out of something. He's tied to death somehow. He's addicted to or needs Deathroot he's either needs Deathroot for sustenance, or he's addicted to it, or he just likes it. I think it's more of an addiction thing. Like, he needs it. He says, my appetite, my sin, like, is somehow tied to a punishment for him. I really don't know. It's definitely hinted that he's not a person who turned bestial the way a lot of the Bloodborne characters did, but rather that he was a beast who turned intelligent. That before the Erd Tree, even, there were beasts who gained intelligence, and he's one of them, but somehow tied to death. How? I don't know. I really don't. But that's it. 3 hours of recording later, I think I've gotten out most of what I wanted to say. I'm going to try to pare this down as best I can. But it's still going to be long. I really just... I like paying attention to the story and the details and trying to piece it together, and I wasn't doing it really as I went. I was doing it a little bit, but I like kind of doing it more formally. I feel much more like I understand what's going on, and I understand what the mystery is at play, and I understand what I don't understand. Again, some of those I'll be wrong on. That's totally fine. 100% okay. Yeah, so that's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you next time, where we will actually pick up exploring Caelid and slowly and gradually making our way down towards Redmane Castle somewhere in the south. Bye-bye.